I lied so I could team up with you. With you guys, maybe even a fucking loser would have a chance to survive.
Get out! Bruh. 확 던져버릴 거야. 그러지 마. 할 수 있어.
Stop the cap.
Why'd you wait to say anything?
I wanted to leave here with Jung-jae and our kid. She didn't trust me in the end, though.
I finished Squid Game Season 3, let's talk about it. Spoiler warnings, if you haven't watched it or don't mind being spoiled, this is a warning that what I'm about to say contains spoilers, you've been warned. A while back, I made a YouTube video reviewing Season 2 and giving my own predictions. Let's just say that Season 3 was entirely not how I imagined things would play out. But first, I want to say that the audience needs to have an open mind about the writer's intent. I feel like the viewer can sometimes overreact when a story is predictable, even though the writer clearly wants the viewer to have a clear idea of what to expect. However, Season 3 of Squid Game was the opposite. Instead of opting for character depth, this season has abandoned it, depriving the characters of their relevance and making their depths underwhelming. We were fed a pill that there were more to these characters, so what happened instead? Dae-ho was done dirty. He was written as though he lived under an abusive relationship with his father. This was hinted when he flinched from Player 120 with the scenario of her striking at him because he ran off while also not returning with the ammo back to his teammates. Season 2 left the audience with an open-ended question about his past on whether or not he was ever an ex-Marine. In my video, I said that he cared about impressing Jung-jae and viewed him as a father figure. What I left off from my video was that Jung-jae was vaguely suspicious of dae-ho when the latter said he was good at gong-gi, but after dae-ho explained that he has 4 sisters, his doubts of him instantly evaporated. Now learning from Season 3 that dae-ho lied about ever being in the Marines, or at least his actual identity was as a social service personnel so that he can prolong his survival, leaves this scene from questioning manhood into nothing more than a lighthearted joke. It's a complete waste of his character. Maybe that's South Korea for you. I think it would have benefited his character if he got acquainted with the trans women inside the game, as those two had a parallel relationship. One is trying to be more masculine while the other is trying to be more feminine. I also noted from my video with clips where dae-ho didn't know how to hold a gun, and that was a red flag that the guy wasn't ever in the Marines. But I concluded that dae-ho was a new recruit who hid after entering actual combat, which doesn't make sense looking back on it because it would mean one of two things. Either he was medically discharged, with PTSD, or he was dishonorably discharged for abandoning his post. For any of the two to occur, he had to have completed all of his training necessary for actual combat. In Season 3, it is revealed, although there's a mistranslation in the English subtitles, that dae-ho actually served as a social service personnel. This is an alternative for those who don't meet the physical or mental requirements for active duty. He did receive basic training in that capacity, but evidently not sufficient to prepare him for combat. Dae-ho faked his tattoo because he was too embarrassed over not having the credentials to enlist in the Marines. He strongly wanted to earn his male peers' acceptance and prove his masculinity, but instead he became a means to an end for gi-hun, one of the people he respected. At first it didn't make sense to me that gi-hun would avenge his teammates by killing dae-ho, but wouldn't kill to save both him and the baby when when he had the opportunity to do so. The creator of Squid Game intended for gi-hun to be filled with blind rage that he ends up blaming dae-ho for lying about his background, which cost their lives, including gi-hun's best friend, Jung-jae. After gi-hun avenges his deceased allies, he was ready to commit suicide, but one of the pink guards stopped him, so he's better now. This is where the mom and son duo play a part, with only the mom surviving, which is more sad to think about because she had to protect a mother and her baby from getting killed by her own son. This of course causes her to commit suicide, but before she does, she pleads for gi-hun to look over the mother and her baby. I read comments about her taking her own life so that gi-hun can wake up, but I doubt that was her intention. The lady had to witness her own son getting killed by making that difficult choice to protect a stranger over her own flesh and blood, which is why her guilt overcame her. But maybe they meant that her suicide, though unrelated to gi-hun, was consequential for gi-hun to get back on his feet. Now that gi-hun is reminded why he's here in the first place, to rescue everyone in the game, he doesn't kill the contestants while they're sleeping, with the belief that he can save lives, or more so, this unwavering hope that the people on the boat will find the island and obstruct the organization from its operations. Gi-hun kept his promise to save the baby until the end. With that said, I can talk about the mom and son duo and player 222 and her ex-boyfriend. The son from the mom and son duo always gave me the vibe that I should be worried about him doing something stupid. Let's actually discuss the mingle game, because when I did my video, I said I was confused by this atmosphere of betrayal whom the mom and son duo were shrouded in. Either we watched two separate scenes of the same episode, but I saw two guys pulling the son away from his mother, so how is the son supposed to go back to his mother? That's not betrayal. But after processing that scene and watching season 3, I think the message is that the son is weak. The mother understands her son very well. Season 3 explained that her son has the tendency to blame himself for every conceivable thing because he's too hard on himself and too pure. He's way too gullible that he ends up on these bad situations. So looking back at Mingle, it looked like his mom was trying to be supportive of her son and convince him that he didn't betray her, in contrast to convincing herself that she was betrayed. In season 2, before the third game, they had a voting round with the son pressing O, despite that going against his mother's request. But I also want to point out that he wasn't the only outlier. The trans women and gi-hun's best friend were notable characters that were tempted by the prize money, which led them to press O. It's revealed that her son wasn't being honest with her about how much she's in debt, so he decided to vote O alongside Jung-jae, who is paying for his debt, and the trans woman who is paying for her transition. The consequences of their action resulted in the son almost losing his mother, while the trans woman lost her newly met companion, Young-mi. Though the votes were 139-0 to 116X, which wouldn't have changed anything if the main cast hadn't voted O, the son felt guilty for his vote regardless. He blamed himself for being pulled away from his mother and how that brought his mom into a vulnerable position. His mother assured him that this wasn't his fault, which is true because again, blue outnumber red by 2 digits, and also the people running these games are the ones to blame, not her son. The split caused an emotional reaction between the two. The reason behind her lying to player 1 and gi-hun about the two of them getting lost was to save face to her son so they wouldn't think her son is weak. In hide and seek, his mother made the mistake of switching with him, giving him the knife, despite knowing how soft her son is, so that's why she believed she killed her own son. I found their deaths to be an exception. However, I don't think her mom would be dumb enough or willing to agree with having her son go and take the life of a contestant. It goes against her moral compass and instinct as a mother to have her own son be a walking murderer. I think realistically, she would want both of them to be blue as the ideal. That way they can go together and hide. She knows her son is incapable of killing someone, so it made no sense for that to happen in the story. There were players who preferred the red vest, so it wouldn't have been hard to switch with someone. She would have prevented him from switching to the red team, as She already prevented him before from almost participating in the revolt that gi-hun orchestrated. She was afraid that her son would lose his life as he is not a fighter, and it's thanks to her that he got to live if he had joined. This piece of information makes the story flawed. The son's logic behind being on the red team is so that they wouldn't be an easy target because his mom has bad knees. And he for one doesn't think he'd be a good protector. Nonetheless, it's on brand for the son to do something stupid, but I'm not totally convinced with his mother allowing this. I suppose the son pressuring her got to her, although feels very convenient to the plot. Honestly, the demise of the mom and son duo was horribly brutal. I was left traumatized by the way their ending was handled, but I won't deny that I enjoyed every second of it. I would have preferred the son to have a redemption ending, though. This is what director, producer, and screenwriter Hwang Dong-hyuk said on Lead Bible about the mom and son duo's ending. I think that most people would have thought that the mother would end up sacrificing herself for her son, but I wanted to twist that expectation. End quote. That's how we got stuck with the mom having to choose between saving her son or saving the mother and her baby. I can see part of gi-hun is a son who, while struggling with a gambling addiction and behaving like a good-for-nothing son, is compassionate and empathetic. It was gi-hun's participation in the Squid Game that ultimately led to his mother's end, which draws a comparison to yong-sik foolishness leading to his own mother's end. When the players were asked to form a group for the second game, Six-Legged Pantalon, the mom and son duo was turned down by the three guys, but one of the guys said if he could dish the old lady, he can join the group. His mom even insisted that he join them, but the son refused to leave her side. He has also been considerate of Hyunjoo's feelings as a trans woman when his mom judged her initially. It was a lost opportunity to use his character as the son who protects his mother, which would have had the same effect as exceeding expectations. If not the protector, he had the opportunity to kill player 172, one of the guys that pulled him away from his mom during Mingle. That would have been the perfect chance for his redemption, though I wouldn't recommend this route, but it's better than going after the girl or her baby. I'm mad about player 222. They're seriously going to handicap her with a fractured ankle during hide and seek. I just found that to be over the top, but I love how that coincidentally ties in with the next game, Jump Rope. That girl was gone, and she also gave birth to a baby. That was crazy. Then her protector, Hyunjoo, was killed by her ex-boyfriend. I regret not listening to my dad when he told me that the ex-boyfriend did try to help her. Player 222 shooed him away when he offered to help her cross the bridge. I remembered, oh yeah, that did happen. There's this compelling argument that he never actually cared for either player 222 or their baby, seeing both as financial gain rather than human lives. But he has been actively trying to get her out of the game since the beginning, or at least after he found out she was a player. We see that when he pressed X for her each round. He has also defended her when Thanos threatened to get near her. Most importantly, during season 3, she switched side and gave him the knife. You don't just hand over a knife to someone you don't trust. Additionally, there were many instances where player 222 cared about players 333's well-being. After player 333 got in a fight with Thanos and player 124, she checked up on him the following morning to look at his bruises. In fact, this is the scene where she made her presence known to him. When gi-hun's chosen group planned to hide and wait for the sneak attacks to conspire during their bedtime, player 222 told her ex-boyfriend to hide and not to interfere. Before gi-hun got players to rebel against the Squid Game, player 222 signaled for player 333 not to participate in the rebellion. Player 333 is a misunderstood character and a badly written one. I don't see him as a liar. It's not accurate to call him a scammer, even though he's known as a crypto scammer by the players who ended up in the Squid Game because of him. He has this popular YouTube channel by the name MG Coin, which he uses to promote a fraudulent coin called Dalmatian, based on the white coated and black spotted dog, and then tells his ex-girlfriend to invest in the coin. It doesn't make sense to me that he would scam his own girlfriend, who's now his ex, or ruin his own reputation. It is known that he is on the run, receiving death threats, so he severed his relationship with her. He also wanted her to get an abortion because it wouldn't be sustainable to raise a baby. We know player 222 is determined to have this baby. It pains me to see player 222 222 shown as a good character while player 333 talks about protecting her and her baby but makes these L's that ultimately dooms her. People give his character way too much credit, seeing him as this master manipulator when he works best as a character that does things unintentionally, like on Mingle. He takes the spot of Young-mi, who was knocked down from the group, killing her, but you can't blame him for causing her death. It was too late for Young-mi and the door had just locked when player 333 came in. The ex-boyfriend tries to help her in the games, but not without making a blunder. It was in season 3 that player 222 trust for him was severed when his greed overcame him. He partnered up with player 124, which is a weird choice, to kill as many blue players as possible in hide and seek. This greed would lead him to kill her protector, as we just discussed. The thing is that if he hadn't done so, I want to believe that someone who was trained to survive like Hyunju would have worked with another player to get her over the bridge. The writers put him in this awful position where he has to leave his injured ex-girlfriend behind while dealing with the player in front of him whom he yelled at. That player clings on for dear life, begging player 333 for help, thereby conveying player 333 as an egoistic character. I find that to be a predicament for anyone, including gi-hun. I think before gi-hun got a hold of the baby, seeing player 222 was in no condition to safely walk with her child, player 333 went back for her, indicating that he would have helped carry their baby if not for gi-hun. He also seemed both wounded and ashamed of himself when gi-hun was tasked to bring the baby over the bridge. Afterwards, he looked jealous seeing player 222 beaming at the sight of gi-hun safely with her baby, or maybe he was confused by gi-hun's altruism. Throughout season 2 and 3, she always pushed her ex-boyfriend away. When she first spoke to him, she made it clear that she would survive without his help. When he tried to team up with her at the Panthalon, she declined. It's hard to blame player 333 when player 222 doesn't reciprocate aside from giving mixed signals. She looks out for him. It's understandable that player 222 wouldn't trust him because he deserted her. She even accused him of only wanting her for the prize money, but I think he wanted to secure both finances and his relationship with her. I'm inclined to believe he prioritizes her more than the former. He gave her a sweet potato in one scene and later asked her to take his life so she could move on to the next game before switching teams. He felt guilt after penetrating Hyunju with his knife. And I don't think he paid attention to who he was stabbing because he had his head down, which was what the actor described happened in the scene. Roll the clip.
빠져나가 보려고. 아니야, 내가 볼
모를
때.
수가 없어.
저 120번 조연주인데. 이렇게 했잖아요. 몰랐어요.
After player 222 mourns for the mother of the mom and son duo, you can see players 333 sad facial expression and a sense of helplessness from him. Player 222 has always pushed him away, so he knew he couldn't comfort her. Even though she told him to get lost during jump rope, I believe she hoped that he would carry her over somehow. While it's true that he let player 222 down, he didn't predict any of the repercussions. When he found out just how badly injured player 222 was, he didn't have the time to initiate a plan to get her across the bridge. It's unfortunate, it's brutal. Not even gi-hun predicted or thought ahead of time how he had to wait for all the other players to jump across the bridge, leaving player 222 with only a minute left. I think if he had stayed behind for her and let gi-hun cross over, it would have been possible to get her across the bridge with two of them carrying her from the front and back. That would have been epic and given the guy redemption for his blunders. Sadly, the scene we got does show he prioritizes his life more than player 222, and I just hate it because we're forced to believe he was taking advantage of her and that player 222 was right about not trusting him since the beginning. Don't even get me started on how people argue that his opinion for her to get an abortion aligns with his indifference towards the baby. Regardless if you're pro-abortion, everyone can agree that a newborn baby is alive. Compared that with Sang-woo, who was motivated by making his mother proud, doing anything he can to win, that he intellectualizes his actions to ignore the pain of those bad deeds. Take for example the husband who competed against his wife in the game Marble, where he pleads for the other players to vote to go home. But then Sang-woo, who had to betray Ali, projects and loses his cool because he did not want to face any remorse for what he did, and the husband later player commits suicide. Sang-woo couldn't stand being an unfilial son to his mother to the point of committing suicide, which he attempted to do before receiving an invitation card to rejoin the Squid Game. While gi-hun was unable to take the life of his childhood friend, Sang-woo did not hesitate to end his own life during the final game, allowing gi-hun to become the sole winner with the request that he helps his mother. Player 333, on the other hand, goes against what he was meant to protect. Why couldn't he thank gi-hun for protecting his baby? Why couldn't he fulfill the wish of the mother of his child? It devoids him of any complexity to his character. This is the same problem that both dae-ho and yong-sik had, where they became shallow characters instead of overcoming any scene. It's not like they were the same as the remaining players from the final game, whose purpose in the story is to be shallow. They've only made it this far because they put themselves first. I find it hard to believe that player 333 would choose the prize money over his own child. However, that is the reality we are given. We are forced to believe this since he wouldn't let gi-hun advance to the last shape, indicating that he wanted gi-hun out of the final round so that he can drop his own baby and be declared the winner. It's insane. Is he wanting a fresh start? To live a life with that kind of money if that means abandoning his girl, whom he wanted to protect, and sacrificing the life of their child? It's all too convenient and it's bad writing. Dong-hyuk originally had a different ending in mind, with gi-hun surviving the game alongside a few of the other major players before settling with gi-hun to sacrifice himself for the baby, or for the future generation, as Dong-hyuk puts it. His reasoning for the ending change is answered in Vanity Fair, where he says, quote, "What kind of message should I be sending to the world? I felt that the world has gotten even worse compared to when I was working on season 1. Economic inequality was getting worse. There was no real solutions being offered for the climate crisis. The threat of war was growing in various parts of the world, and the number of vulnerable people falling outside the social safety net was increasing. It felt like the younger generations were losing more and more hope for the future. So as part of the older generation, I thought that in order to leave a better world for future generations, it was time for us to put a halt to our insistent greed and selfishness. At least to some extent, I felt it was time for us to make sacrifices and start thinking seriously about how we can create a better future," end quote. While that's sweet and I respect the message, it doesn't excuse the bad writing. Myun-gi being the father of that child and seeing gi-hun deliver his baby to safety should have been enough for the cynical Myun-gi to trust him. He was ready to protect his baby after those group of men were walking towards gi-hun, who was holding onto his child. He also manipulated those guys to find an opening where he can turn the table and save his baby. Let Myun-gi, the father, be the one to sacrifice himself for the baby, with the guilt of dooming the person he was meant to protect as his doing. And similar to Sang-woo, requests gi-hun to look over their child. Sang-woo got to redeem himself, whereas player 333, similar to the other characters, did not. Myun-gi had the courage to slay players because he already done so with Thanos, although that was in self-defense. When he teams up with Namgyu, he suggests they kill their target at the same time so they can both share the kill, which is fitting of his character to not trust anyone, as we see in the scene of him turning down help from gi-hun's allies. But the same thing is true with him using that method to make it easier on him, or to minimize his guilt. Sounds familiar? The actor who plays Myun-gi was confused by his character's decision and with the director's intention in the final scene where he fights gi-hun on the Sky Squid Game platform. He tells The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "It was the worst situation. Looking back on filming that scene, I still didn't really have the full conviction or understanding of what kind of character Myun-gi is. Even until that very last point. All the way up until then, I was always questioning his motives and what kind of character he is deep down. So in the last scene, I really had to listen closely to the direction I received from director Hwang, putting all my effort into understanding and focusing on his intent." End quote. Throughout the filming, director Hwang didn't want Im Soo-won to portray his character as neither good nor villainous. This led the actor not to think about good and evil during the final scene, but ultimately focusing on fear, that is, the fear of a pathetic coward. Like most viewers, Im was disappointed by Myun-gi's reaction to the ultimate challenge of deciding between letting gi-hun and the baby live or reuniting with his child. But he picks the cruelest option. himself. He tells the rap, quote, "He is a really cunning character. I thought having a baby, his baby, would really strike some sense to him to take responsibility as his father, but also his sense of desperation theaters into the realm of thinking the baby possibly could be sacrificed. And for me, that was a huge betrayal just from a personal point of view," end quote. Yes, we were all rooting for myun-gi to rekindle his humanity, to follow his paternal instincts. What then brought about such a tragic resolution as seen with the fates of the other major characters? Well, director Hwang explains this on AKP. Quote, "I wanted the ending to go as dark as possible. I wanted to show one last flicker of humanity in a place where humanity seemed completely absent. The further it went, the more hopeless it should feel," end quote. I don't like how the main character is the only light or the only exception from the cruelty of the games. I think it's more meaningful when a group of individuals, humans, go against the authoritarian. After all, you need a number of people working together to make something happen. One person isn't going to change anything, but a group of people can. The Squid Games are still going to happen regardless of gi-hun's bravery and kindness. The failure of the rebellion in season 2 just shows that the fight isn't easy. You have to not give up. Some of the players that stood by gi-hun did not participate in the rebellion, so there was still hope. I don't object on the fact that a single person can cause a domino effect, but what I am saying is that gi-hun has already displayed enough benevolence to have an effect on the other remaining players to put their trust in him, myun-gi being one of them. I feel like this would have been a better conclusion if your goal was to restore our faith in humanity with the world spiraling out of control and all. I like the thought that at our core, people are fundamentally alike, possessing the conscience to do what is right when the opportunity arises. I read on AKP that director Hwang kept finding flaws as he wrote his script even into completion. I'm reminded of when gi-hun discussed to his mates the plan of hiding during their bedtime while allowing those asleep be sacrificed when it comes time for the other side to ambush them. That scene rubs me the wrong way because being complicit is no different than murder. I get the logic behind it, serving the greater good, but I didn't like when gi-hun didn't pay back those deaths. The guy was correct about shooting them. Frankly, they don't deserve to live, and it's disrespectful to the people they've sacrificed. To clarify, I did like that gi-hun wasn't a full-on pacifist, but I also thought he should have eliminated those thugs. It's gi-hun's selfishness and getting revenge on the game's organization that got him to prioritize the mission over keeping as many ex-players alive. When he got what he wanted, he automatically returns to saving every player. One would think the benefit of that is for the thugs to see gi-hun in a new light, but they are always going to be shallow characters, having learned nothing from that whole ordeal. Rather than thanking gi-hun, actually they gave him a round of applause, so let me rephrase that. Instead of seeing him as this heroic person, they assumed the worst when he came back in a coffin, suspecting that he tricked those players into joining his rebellion. Or maybe it was sarcasm from their group. Either way, they suck and didn't join in gi-hun's uprising anyways. On the other hand, myun-gi is not completely evil or good, just a fool, so there was an opening for him to evaluate gi-hun. It doesn't make sense to me for a smart guy like myun-gi to be override by fear when there was full transparency in gi-hun's actions. The evidence is all laid out. We can infer that myun-gi lost all trust in people after promoting a fraudulent coin because he was a victim in the scam, but the series never pushes on it, so myun-gi looks even more pathetic. For myun-gi to have some depth and be relatable, that should have been the whole focus. Aside from Jung-jae, he couldn't trust anyone in the game, though someone like gi-hun would have worked as a remedy to rely on people again. I get there's a debate in the topic of childbirth where the mother is choosing between herself or her child, with men most likely choosing to save their wife over the baby, but if the baby is the last connection to her, the man would do anything to protect that baby. With Jung-jae out of the picture, myun-gi's love for the baby should be stronger because it's all he has left of her. Despite the lack of fleshed out characters, Min-soo was an outlier in season 3. I was surprised because he wasn't that interesting of a character in season 2, but it just goes to show that giving them redemption helps make them real. Min-soo has this innocence about him that attracted Simi. There's no actual backstory to why she felt safe around Min-soo, but it was probably the first time since Min-soo found a genuine connection. It's revealed in season 6 of season 2 that Min-soo was in debt because of a rental scam. This aligns with his personality of going along with others and fear of confrontation, which is why he stays voiceless. It's only through his bond with Simi does he have the courage to stand up to peer pressure, although he is not as fearless as her. I see Simi as someone who conditions herself to be tough in order to survive against the evil in this world. She probably deals with people like Thanos and Namgyu on a regular basis, which enables her to pick up on social cues necessary for her survival. Unfortunately, she is eliminated by Namgyu early on, but she reappears in season 3 as a ghost that haunts Min-soo, a manifestation of his guilt combined with hard drugs for not being strong enough to protect her. It's too bad we couldn't learn more about Simi as a character. The director even told the Wall Street Journal of his regret in writing her an early exit from the story. In the scene where the players must form a team of 3 to enter a room, Thanos and Namgyu were already paired up. Thanos suggested that Simi and Min-soo play rock, paper, scissors to determine the third person of their party, but Simi offers her hand to Min-soo. Faced with the overwhelming pressure from Thanos and Namgyu, he made an impulsive decision to take part in the rock, paper, scissors game. Min-soo's absence of self-assurance coupled with his own indecisiveness made it impossible for him to retract his decision, and as a result, he was taken away by those he did not want to accompany. This happened at the exact time when Yong-sik is dragged away from his mother, which is far from coincidental. As we already discussed, these are 2 of the weakest links. The game mingle demonstrates just how powerless the weak is against the stronger opponents. Min-soo was frantically looking for Simi and felt a wave of relief when he found her alive. Like Yong-sik's mother, I believe Simi held no grudges against Min-soo. I am sure she recognized his timid nature, but that doesn't lessen her disappointment in him. In Min-soo's defense, he tried to protect Simi during lights out, and yes, he was scared, but the situation became increasingly challenging to rescue her with the lights flashing and being situated on the top bunk. He would have had to respond fast to get to her. When he looked again, Simi was beyond saving, getting stabbed multiple times. The sight of her being brutally attacked caused Min-soo to cover his ears in terror. We need to remember that it was gi-hun's selfishness that got some of the ex-players killed. The blame lies partly with gi-hun and largely with Namgyu, her killer. Although I didn't like Thanos in season 2, I appreciate how his necklace, which concealed his drugs, was intertwined with the destinies of some members of his group, aiding them to zone out of their fears. Originally, Thanos' group consisted of him, Namgyu, Gyeong-soo, a fan of Thanos, Simi, and Min-soo. He lost one member after kicking Gyeong-soo in the abdomen, only to forget what he did because he was under the drug's influence. Let's take a second to talk about Namgyu, who I think is the most misunderstood character, with people calling him cruel and heartless. When Namgyu befriended Thanos, it was clearly out of admiration. He looked out for him when he tried to harm myun-gi publicly, showing that he cares what people think of Thanos. When a fan of Thanos, who happened to be Gyeong-soo, recognized his idol, with some people trying to suppress their excitement, Namgyu was seen looking smug. In contrast to Namgyu feeling proud for his friend, Thanos was expressionless. As the people gathered to take a picture with the rap legend Thanos, the rapper signaled for player 196 to join in, only to receive the cold shoulder. Her bad treatment didn't go unnoticed as Namgyu looked puzzled, as if saying, "Are you blind? This is the great Thanos." However, he soon returned smiling for the camera, enjoying the moment as the only person with his hands on Thanos. Then after the first game, Namgyu asked how Thanos was doing, seeing that there was blood on his face. Namgyu's self-worth depended on Thanos, and when that was not being met, that admiration he had for Thanos turned into resentment. Since the first moment they met, Thanos couldn't say his name right.
너 이름 남주였나?
남규.
네 남주야. 남규. 야 남주야 너 구친 맞잖아.
남규.
그래 남규야. 야 남주야. 누나라고 해봐.
When Namgyu didn't want Thanos to team up with Simi, he was ignored. He frowned when Simi introduced Min-soo, even pointing him out as a loser, but Thanos dismissed him once again. Instead, Thanos gave a warm welcome to the new guy. Namgyu can be seen staring at Simi and Min-soo, clearly not happy with their inclusion in the team. Jung-jae and dae-ho actually do the same thing with Jun-hee, except they stared with concern for her rather than discontent. It's during the six-legged pentathlon that Namgyu will open a Pandora's box, persuading Thanos for a taste of his drugs. Namgyu reveals two crucial pieces of information about his background. First, when he rolled up his sleeve to show Thanos his track marks, and second, when he mentioned going out of his way to provide all kinds of exotic drugs to him, including free drinks as revealed in Season 3. The first piece of information suggests Namgyu may have been going through dark times, relying on drugs to cope with his pain of feeling unworthy. One could write him off as just a drug addict, but drugs can be linked to escapism, and both Thanos and Namgyu were using it for that purpose. The second piece of information reveals that Namgyu had history with Thanos prior to the games, but they never clicked until now, meaning Namgyu many attempts to get close with Thanos at the club went unnoticed. It's from the drugs that Namgyu wielded power, but with power also came with rage. When Thanos met his end, Namgyu did not stop to think about Thanos. Rather, he took his necklace and the fork lodged in his neck to eliminate the person he faces now, angered by Thanos' treatment of him. Thanos could remember Yong-sik and Min-sik names, but not his. This frustration was evident earlier when Min-sik came to him inquiring about Yong-sik whereabouts and mingle. Despite what Thanos told Namgyu earlier in the dormitory to play nice, he found himself irritated with Min-sik. What triggered Namgyu was being addressed as dude by Min-sik rather than being called by his actual name, as Min-sik did for Yong-sik. Namgyu does not perceive Min-sik as his equal, despite them being the same age, nor does he consider him a friend. Also in the dormitory, Namgyu was annoyed that Thanos expected him to treat Min-sik as an equal, a person he considered a loser. It's only when Min-sik drew scissors on Simi does Namgyu evaluation of Min-sik change to total respect, since Namgyu hated Simi the most out of any player. Namgyu had a tumultuous love-hate relationship with Thanos. Even after Thanos died, Namgyu sat on his deceased companion's bed, visibly affected by it. In Season 3, he impersonated Thanos, showing just how much he admired him. Despite this, he did not resent myun-gi for taking Thanos' life, even extending an olive branch by inviting him to a truce with the common goal of killing as many blue players in hide and seek. Because of the drug, the cruelty of the games, and his own feelings of inadequacy, Namgyu transformed into a monster. Then there's Thanos, who I don't think was evil, but he was certainly a dangerous threat. He had a personal beef with myun-gi for causing his financial trouble. There was many more young people in Season 2 compared to the first season, and myun-gi was one of the causes, encouraging his young viewers on his popular and trusted platform to invest large amounts, or even all of their savings, into a cryptocurrency that proved to be a scam. This explains Thanos' relentless bullying of myun-gi. Thanos is shown as a ladies' man, enjoying his time flirting with player 196 and 380, and even offering his protection to Simi. I know he had threatened to get near Junhee, but that was simply a tactic to control myun-gi into changing his vote, so they can continue onwards to the following game. With the drug, Thanos unleashed chaos set off by player 196's demise, who was in close proximity to him. Her death instilled fear in Thanos. It's strange because I don't get annoyed by Namgyu and Min-sik drug state, but the same can't be said about Thanos. Through the effect of the drug, Thanos becomes erratic and obnoxious. I think it's the fact that he's an attention seeker. On the other hand, Thanos can be quite nice, but his drug state causes him to be mischievous and even harm the people he cares about. When Yong-sik was kicked by Thanos, the latter panicked upon not seeing Yong-sik, suggesting he does care for his teammates. However, the drugs hinder his ability to make good decision making and see things clearly. I bet if player 196 was still in the game, her character would have probably complemented Thanos' character, making him tolerable. It was during this scene at the dormitory that I was convinced that Thanos cared for his group, as he stopped Namgyu and Simi from fighting. In Thanos' own words, "We need our teamwork tight." In one round of Mingle where it's 3 people in the door, while Namgyu tells his dude Thanos to hurry and pick one, Simi or Min-sik, Thanos gave his friends an equal opportunity to fight for it with a game of rock, paper, scissors. Though maybe a clear-minded Thanos would have asked Simi and Min-sik to look for another player while they do the same, since that's the smart way. The scene where Thanos was relieved to see Min-sik making it out alive in Mingle shows that Thanos truly cared about Min-sik, as he already already lost one of his teammates. Thanos also shared that he favored running with Min-soo than with Namgyu. As we know, he's really high, so he probably did mistake Min-soo for Namgyu, and Namgyu likes to get very close to Thanos. Let this be an additional injury to Namgyu's pride. In the voting round, Thanos felt betrayed when Simi voted to leave. Happening at the same time, Namgyu pulled on Min-soo's tracksuit as a way to threaten Min-soo. Keep in mind it was Namgyu that planted a seed in Thanos' head to use the pregnant woman as leverage against myun-gi. Thanos' feelings for Min-soo was genuine, whereas Namgyu's feeling for Min-soo was exploitative or controlling. We'll talk more on that later. Thanos was especially hurt when Min-soo voted to leave instead of staying like they agreed on. Thanos would become the second player to die in his group. Namgyu said to Min-soo a quote from Yi-sun Sin, "Those who seek death shall live, those who seek life shall die." It was good advice from Namgyu, but Simi just acted hostile towards him. It appears that she was triggered by his interaction with Thanos and their conversation about the drugs. She looked really stressed too, seeming like she was trying not to think about the drug. This may indicate that she was a previous drug addict. I don't see why Simi would be so rude out of nowhere if not. The part where she mentions Namgyu's shaky hands and calls him a nervous tweaker felt very personal. It could just mean she was calling him a coward, or there could be a much deeper implication. She was convincing herself not to take the drug, or she'd be acting like a maniac. Tweaker is a slang word meaning someone who overused too many drugs to the point where the person is violent and psychotic. Namgyu is so right to call Simi emotional because she instigated the bad blood between the two. Her warning to Min-soo that he should not partake in the drugs or linger with the drug addicts once returning home further reinforced her background as a former drug addict. It added a layer to her character, but again, the director takes away the complexities of these characters. As we know, Simi looked down on Namgyu for being a drug addict, causing him to hate her and ultimately killing her in the special game of Lights Out. With Simi being the third player to die, it's Namgyu and Min-soo left, continuing on for Season 3. In the following game, Namgyu approached Min-soo with good intentions, suggesting he switch to the blue team as he has a higher chance of surviving by hiding rather than hunting for other players. He even asked Min-soo where he ran off to in Lights Out and praised him for hiding. When Min-soo reacted to Simi's name being mentioned, Namgyu encouraged him to have that same angry look he's giving him in order to survive. It's apparent that Namgyu cared about Min-soo, now viewing him as his dude and his bro, when he initially didn't, helping him get through the current game. He wanted Min-soo to look up to him, even if it's a power dynamic, but Min-soo was reluctant. Namgyu needed someone who could understand and accept him, so myun-gi, someone who killed a player, filled that void in Thanos' stead, going around killing players with myun-gi and singing to him. This power dynamic flipped when it's Min-soo who has the cross now. With it, he was able to confront Seung-yu, a fraud who preys on the weak. Min-soo voted O on round 5, determined to take down Namgyu and avenge Simi, while Namgyu voted X as he couldn't find a cross necklace to give him a boost. Finally, Min-soo was able to face the antagonist of his life, call him a pussy, and enact his vengeance by throwing the cross necklace at the bridge where Namgyu would discover what's inside, an empty case. Taken aback, he falls to his death, mashing up to his earlier quote on Yi-sun Sin about only those willing to die will live and those willing to live will die. Namgyu lost his willpower because there was nothing inside. Min-soo is the last player in his group to die in the Squid Game, but he at least found peace in his death, knowing he would meet Simi in the afterlife. The cross necklace represented the group's savior who they worshipped for strength, but it also meant their eventual death. Speaking of faith, I am saddened by the outcome of the shaman, Seung-yu, who calls herself the shaman of the sea. She was once a renowned shaman, but she's now past her prime. On ATP, director Hwang expressed his depiction of her character as someone whose spiritual powers come and go, claiming his own grandmother was once scammed by a shaman who had lost her powers. While she engaged in shenanigans, not all of her claims were false. For instance, in Mingle, Seung-yu looked at Jeon-hee's belly and then turned to gi-hun, proclaiming the reason why gi-hun was alive was because of destiny. She returned back to Jun-hee, foreshadowing to gi-hun's destiny and protecting her baby baby and sacrificing himself. Let's not forget her curses on players, predicting how they will die in the games. Her teammates from the six-legged pentathlon witnessing the deaths of their own members, and Jung-jae falling at great heights, shattering his bones and pulverizing all of his organs. Seung-yu has high intuition and is good at both observing and reading into people's hearts. It's because of these gifts, which she believes originated from the gods, that builds an ego on her self-importance, frequently watching players from above the bunk beds. When Seung-yu stood toe-to-toe with Min-soo, she was able to discern the goat that was eating him alive, not responding quick enough to save Simi and Lights Out. Finding the door to the exit really struck her ego, clouding her judgment due to her excessive arrogance, but I still found it silly that she thought it would be a good idea to aggravate an unstable Min-soo who was holding a knife. Like, girl, did you think the gods would protect you? I was rooting for Seung-yu to make some brilliant moves, and I suppose she had, with smearing blood in the shape of an arrow to find a secret door so she can look like a genuine shaman, but at the end of the day, she's a coward betraying her loyal subjects. Not to worry, because she did reap what she sowed. Admittedly, it's the exact scene where she deserted her followers that I found funny. It was Seung-yu who helped in the tie vote by converting an X player into an O, creating a chain reaction where the male players fought and killed one another in the bathroom. I don't know what I was expecting from Seung-yu. I had these high expectations. I wanted to see more leadership from her character, an alternative story where Seung-yu used number as an advantage to impede a weaker red player and take one of their knife. And to add to that, who says that a red player can't give their knife away willingly to a blue player? That would have been interesting. I will still concede with the director's vision for Seung-yu because there are not many highly intelligent players in the game, with the majority of them being dumb enough to get tricked to be in the situation they are in. If Seung-yu was more cunning, maybe she wouldn't have needed to be in the Squid Game, or maybe the director could have done her a little differently. Her character was similar to player 244 from season 1, who was a fellow practitioner of religion, worshipping his god and praying to him. Furthermore, he had abandoned all hope when he received no answer from his god. It's also no coincidence if Seung-yu reminds you of myun-gi from season 1, as director Hwang wanted to have a crazy character like her for season 2. Shamanism, or Moso, is deeply rooted in Korean history and culture, with women dominating the practice historically, and they still do today, and predating religions more ancient than Yu-Bul-do, meaning Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, as well as Christianity being the youngest religion out of all of them. It has even experienced a resurgence, growing in popularity among younger people. I do have an issue with Seung-yu's background as a shaman in the show. It's considered both a vocation and profession. Shamans are meant to uphold integrity and act humble. It's bad practice for them to act all high and mighty, or at least that's what I assume, because they aren't deities but rather intermediaries between the human world and spirit realm. They are marginalized as is since the Joseon dynasty, which favored Neo-Confucianism, a teaching that restricted women from power. Japanese colonization of Korea further suppressed these women shamans, also known as mudang or manchin. Director Hwang is aware of its modern popularity and fake shamans scamming people on YouTube, but he also doesn't dismiss the whole practice as fraudulent. I didn't mind the crazy Korean Christian in season 1 because it's important to recognize hypocrisy in a large, respected religion, that not all devoted followers are good people. Seung-yu, on the other hand, is practicing a faith with a long history of stigma that is only now becoming popular, which I feel could be represented in a positive light. K-pop Demon Hunters, which came out recently and gained traction, is a good example of modernizing and honoring Korean shamanism. Drop her crazy persona, give her some grace as a mudang. It's the same old stereotypes, ominous, evil, and unhinged. I'm not saying to cover cover your eyes and ears or to believe in their gods, but as a way to respect Korean culture. Director Hwang cautioned his audience against relying on shamans word for word, as to not buy into some shady shaman practices that prey on the vulnerable. Drew Soon-yu character by having her small following trust her every word that resulted in them getting betrayed at the end. Good message, but again, this narration relies heavily on bad stereotypes. Soon-yu speaks loudly to appear larger than life and berates players, making her intolerable. I don't think there's a right or wrong here, but I do think the Madang should be treated more respectfully and intellectually, like perhaps have Soon-yu struggle in her journey in the loss of her abundance of power. Maybe she endangered her followers into their demises, so she took her own life because she failed them. This way, it's not beyond the realm of reality and still warns the audience to not put all of your eggs in one basket where it leads to financial trouble and life-altering injuries. Interesting enough, her battle with Minsu symbolizes the clash between the two religions of Christianity, representing Minsu, and Muslim, representing Soon-yu. It's ironic that Minsu, who can see visions of spirits, winning against the Mudang, who does spirit mediumship. Christianity, which practices on repentance and forgiveness, was attained when Minsu was forgiven for his sin. The last important player I want to discuss is player 100, Jung-jae, who is the one with the highest depth in the games. Big time coward. He had no skills in teamwork, betraying them for his own preservation. He even betrayed Soon-yu, who showed him the way to the exit, which I know she deserved, but at the same time, that's not how you thank someone who helped you. It's in the Squid Game that he already formed an alliance back in the dormitory to choose 3 players to sacrifice for the final prize money. The alliance was made up of shallow characters who did despicable and selfish things to get where they are, including myun-gi and player 39, also known as the lunchbox guy, who at the start was actively trying to leave the game, but threatened succumb to staying given that the blue players ambushed people trying to leave the game. However, he showed his greed in the dormitory upon knowing that the baby counts as a player, which definitely shows him as a shallow character. In the Squid Game, one went up to Minsu telling him that they've made a democratic vote to eliminate him, even though it was in practice unfair. For the next round, myun-gi managed to push one of Jung-jae's allies and switch to gi-hun's side, betraying his pact. Jung-jae allies had to face between gi-hun with a knife and myun-gi with a pole. They decided to brutally assault their own player, the weakest link, as the sacrifice for the final round instead of having to draw lots or fight to the death. That didn't go as planned, with gi-hun pitying the unnamed lunchbox guy. Jung-jae's teammates fought against gi-hun and myun-gi while he stayed idle. In the end, he got what he deserved for every backstabbing he committed because the man lacks balls. Jung-jae was a foil to gi-hun's character, someone who was actively trying to get people to leave the game, while he was asking players to play one more game.
One more game, no more, no less.
Yeah, one more game, we can do it!
One more game.
One more game! 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 One more game!
Jung-jae valued money, gi-hun valued life. I was fine with Jung-jae as a villain or a threat to gi-hun. He was by far the best handled character to write off compared to dae-ho, yong-sik, and myun-gi. I suppose I was sort of moved by gi-hun's exit, as well as the mom and son duo, but they all felt forced to perish in such a way. Season 3 really could have gone better. In fact, a lot of the audience just wanted a happy ending for them, to overcome the Squid Game. We love a survivor. To see them all together would have given the audience much more hope for the future than having gi-hun sacrifice himself for a stranger's baby. His sacrifice means leaving his own daughter for good, and that's honestly so cruel. He left the world being a deadbeat dad. In case you've forgotten, gi-hun spent 1 year recovering what he went through from the games and 2 years pursuing the Squid Game instead of being with his daughter. He actually promised her that he would go to America to see her and give her a birthday present. Instead, it's in the end of season 3 that the frontman man travels to Los Angeles and gives the daughter a well overdue birthday present from her now deceased father, a deposit of his remaining prize money. It's really effed up. They deserve better. Even though season 3 wasn't great character-wise, there were some aspects of this season that I did enjoy. Starting with the relationship between the frontman and gi-hun, I thought those two were the perfect forces between hope and despair. The frontman, or In-ho, also known as Jun-ho's brother, was the main antagonist throughout season 2 and 3, with gi-hun not following the same path as In-ho, a previous winner of the Squid Game. When he was tasked by Il-nam for season 1 to stab the contestants while they were asleep, the same challenge In-ho was giving gi-hun. The frontman since the beginning of season 2 was trying to prove to gi-hun that he is no different than him, that humans are selfish and when it comes to the worst, people will abandon their morality down the window. By making it a point to destroy gi-hun's vision of rescuing players and defeating the system, In-ho believed that would lead to gi-hun losing himself. Instead, gi-hun snapped out of it, finding a new lease on life, which was to fulfill Jung-jae's dying wish. Save the mother and her newborn. Similar to Sang-woo, In-ho needed to validate his actions. Therefore, In-ho's philosophy that people are inherently selfish was starting to crack, and it was gi-hun's sacrifice that completely changed In-ho's mindset. In-ho didn't have to give gi-hun's daughter her dad's prior winnings, but he did so willingly to show respect to gi-hun, who's shown the virtues for humanity. Lastly, the scene where Nyeol is about to take her life was great. Nyeol watching gi-hun sacrifice himself over the newborn restored her faith in humanity, motivating her to continue living. This concludes my video. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for watching. I do think there should be a 4th season with gi-hun's daughter as the main character because season 3 was a hot mess. Unfortunately, the director doesn't plan on making a 4th season. What did you guys think about season 3? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Let me know in the comment section. Peace.
One more game, 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 one more, no less, no more, no less, one more game, one more game, one more game.